Hi, this is a recording of the video format for my slides. Instead of writing the speaker notes, I decided to do it as this because I was writing the speaker notes and it was extremely tedious and boring, and I think I could do a lot better with this format. So, starting this project, I'm doing technical art and I'm James Holt. The initial project was a shader museum, and this is a collection of. Well, I was going to do this in Unreal specifically. I was thinking about Unity, but I stuck with Unreal since this is what I know. I wanted to focus on making like many PBR shaders, sampling from like various games to get a general idea of how I wanted to approach this. So sorry if there's any background noise or anything. So I'm recording on a laptop right now. So instead of just picking something random and aimlessly making a shader towards it, I use games as reference and use it as a rough goal. But this had some drawbacks. A lot of games are very specific, so I try to focus more on more fundamental shaders. I bring this up a bit more later on. So let's go to our mood boards. So I started off by gathering like information on what's expected of a technical artist. This gave me like a good guideline of what I should try and get out of this project and what I should try and strive for. I spoke to quite a few. Kristen Griffin from Ubisoft, lead tech artist. Fraser Hutchinson from Sega. Just various websites talking about like technical artists in the job and its requirements and such. I think there's some people over Discord like Asher Zoo, who works at Epic Games, Tech Art Aid, Oscar, and a few others. I think they're listed down here in the notes. There are a few notes on these slides right now. I kind of stopped halfway through to come to this. And then I named some games and such. So you can see people like Bioshock, Borderlands, Dead Cells, Legend of Zelda, and so forth. And I chose these games because they have shader effects, which really intrigued me and very interesting. So I gathered a lot of references for these to kind of get a general idea of how I'd approach them if I did choose them, and kind of picked out a few shaders in that I did enjoy. Here are a few you can see. So you've got like Last of Us Waves, I think there's Bioshock in the middle, like the fire effect, and there's environmental shaders like procedural texturing in engine. It's a car shader, what was it again? Things like procedural rust and such for cars in The Last of Us whenever they dip into water. And then that's a nice, really nice fire shader down there, and then that's another Bioshock one. So these are the shaders I did pick out, and I made a quick description for them so I could kind of get a quick idea of what they are and how I might approach it, name their difficulty, and then kind of chose how many shaders I wanted to do based on their difficulties. You can see I've got like 2 hard ones, 3 challenging ones, and 3 easy ones, and delegated some time to them. I was quite naive at the start of this project because I didn't know how difficult these shaders were going to be, because at this point I'm very much a beginner. I haven't touched many shaders before, so I didn't really know how much time to delegate to them, and there's quite a bit of back and forth to my teacher of like how much should I actually give myself to do in this project. But I think I should have given myself a bit more leeway because I spent a lot of time on the initial shader, which we'll get to in a second as well. But this is the Notion board down here if you do want to see it. Hopefully it loads. The internet's a bit slow right now. But here's my tech art action plan. Got the high concept here, a message from Kristen Griffin, a reference of what I was going off. So it's a shader museum based off of what I saw from Nina Kloss from Sumo Digital. She also did a shader museum, but I kind of strayed away from the shader museum idea and just started making shaders. And it's quite hard to make a museum of environmental shaders because environments are rather large. I should have just made the problem is this FMP had a lot of changes in concept throughout it, and it never was like a really solid idea of what I should be doing. But I've come to a pretty decent finalized piece, but it would have been nicer to have that more set in stone from the start. So you can see you've got the game references, Bioshock, Legend of Zelda, so forth, so forth. You can see here, we've got references here, kind of ideas, the references, what I chose, images to go alongside them, like media. So if I want to see what it is, so here you go. GIFs where I could. These are the picked ones. Yeah, it's very in-depth, detailed Notion board. So here are some of them that I picked out. As I said, they were quite fundamental environment shaders. I wish I did kind of go for more niche ones, because I think the whole idea of going for more fundamental ones was to provide more of a learning opportunity for myself, as there'll be more expected in more games and more learning opportunities to be available doing things that are more just widely used and common. Whereas doing something like really niche, like this one fire shader in this one game, But you can see here, got Gernston waves, foliage and such, like running around like mass scale, and just trying to keep that optimized. And then we've got ice, like volumetrics, trying to show cracks in the ice with depth and such like that. Displacement in snow. The Last of Us displacement is really nice in Red Dead Redemption as well. And like snow casting, snow falling, landing on people. Environment stuff that I just covered earlier. And then it's like in the bottom right, that's like wear on items, like small prompts. So like dirt buildup or scratches and stuff like that, like procedural stuff that can happen in real time. So these are the key takeaways I had from my artist research. As I said, fundamental shaders, I'm sure you're going to read this anyway. I did say that these shaders have a lot of room to build upon. Since I didn't know the difficulty the shaders are going to have, if I just do, let's say, water, I could probably do water for the whole 20 weeks. I just kept building upon it over and over and over to the point where it's like doing like Sea of Thieves. So there's no real finalized point with some shaders, because they can just keep going until they just are the best they can be. But it was quite hard to. What I found difficult in this project was finding that point where the shader was finalized in a sense, where I could say I'm finished with this one. Let's move on to the next, and I could kind of get caught up in some of them. I did try and do a bit of custom HLSL. I do wish, in retrospect, I did this project in Unity, which would be a lot more HLSL heavy. It still has a shader graph, but the HLSL in there is a bit more hands-on. I don't think Unreal can even do HLSL, so apart from custom nodes, which isn't too great. But I still used them where I could. Here goes the action plan. I just head back over to here. So this was a quick like high concept of what my plan was going to be over these few weeks, like how I was going to delegate my time. The problem was it didn't really got this at all, and it's just a quick like idea of how I was going to tackle each shader, research, start the development, optimize it and blog as I go along, and then refine how it looks and then finalize it and get on to the next one. But I think I gave myself way too much to do. And also, the 2-week task came up first, and we don't get to really choose what our 2-week task is. I put it as a snow displacement shader, because I thought I would be choosing it, but our teacher, Mike, chose it for us, and I probably got given the hardest shader to possibly do, which is Gernston waves. But it was a good learning opportunity to start off with. It's quite math heavy for a starting shader, and it's got so many implementations, and it can be built upon so far. I think I really pushed myself to try and get the best I could out of it when I hadn't had enough experience to really reach that point yet. I would have really loved to do something called Fast Fourier Transforms, which is an implementation of Gernston waves where it looks like perfectly realistic and has all those intricate details of waves crashing into one another, like you see in these pictures here, like Sea of Thieves or something. But I don't think I have had the mental capacity at the time to do Fast Fourier Transforms. So I think right now it's just using like 8 or 4 samples of Gernston waves overlapped onto one another, so it can tile look a bit obvious. But I've got a personal blog for this which covers a lot of this already. So I gathered quite a few references, went to London and such, of water. Some of these aren't too helpful, seeing as the ones that are on like big spans of water at night, and then also the ones that are in day are small expanses, and I think I was kind of going for more for a seascape, but I would like to try like redo the Gernston waves for like a more smaller scene, for like maybe like a pond or something like that. Here's the blog and documentation of the Gernston waves. It's not completely finalized, and I kind of distanced away from it because I kind of found I was spending so much time in this blog that I wasn't actually spending much time just doing the waves and just forwarding my work, and I kind of broke away from it. It was nice writing it all down and learning it, but it sort of demotivated me just kind of being stuck in this blog all the time whenever I made any change to the Gernston waves. But you can see I have an index of everything going through here. So I've researched all the references I found, general concepts of how they work and stuff. I'll just ignore this for now because I'm going to go back to the slides. But you can see they're a little unfinalized right now down towards the bottom. I might tidy these up before submitting, but honestly, the Gernston waves I was done so early on in this project that I probably can't remember everything, and I don't think it's too important because the finalized product is there and I can explain it, but I do understand it. So here we go. This is how you start off the Gernston waves. I think I've written a little bit down here already, but essentially you start off with a sine wave, and this sine wave is controlled through, like, as you expect, like an amplitude, a frequency, and so forth. You can control its phase, which is how it moves with time, which is changing. and you can see the sine wave moves like through the x-axis. I believe that's the x-axis, and it's like panning across. This is then projected in world space, as you see in the bottom right. So you can basically put this ocean water anywhere, and it's not limited by the texture coordinates of the mesh it's on. So, I hope I'm not over-explaining this at all. And then the direction is defined by a vector on the top left, which is then normalized. And you can see on the black and white image here how it's controlling the direction of the waves and how they flow. I think you have to normalize this to prevent it from, if you see here, I think this one isn't normalized, so the waves are almost like stacking up way too quickly if you go past the limit of 0 to 1. So normalized is just taking whatever vector there is. So if you had a vector of 2 and 10, 2 and 10 is at the range of 0 to 1. So that would normalize this vector to 0.2 and 1. So going from there, you have to generate normals for these waves. So the issue with displacing any sort of mesh, especially in real time, with tessellation and displacement and so forth, is that the normals don't update to accommodate this displacement. So I should have got some water. I've been talking so much. So you can see below, well, I guess in the top right, you see the stretching of the reflection, like the ball there. This is because the normals aren't updating, and this curvy plane is retaining the normal information of the flat plane it was before. So you can fix this using DDEX DDY, which compares the 4 pixels that are rendered to the screen, which is a quad. It compares the pixels to one another to basically derive the binormal and tangent, which you can use to generate the normals. But the problem is, you can see in the bottom left, these normals are faceted, so obviously it wouldn't work for something as fluid as water. So you have to generate it a different way. So as I said, binormal and tangent. Binormal, tangent, and the normal is basically taking the u and v direction of the face that it's lying upon to derive the normal orientation of the normal coming off the plane. Oh god, there's so many words. To do that is quite difficult, but you can do it using the equation provided from the sine wave. GPU Gems has a really excellent explanation of it. Even I had I'm not saying even I I'm some benevolent being, but I had a lot of difficulty trying to get the idea, my head wrapped around binormal, tangent, and the normal generation stuff. Even now I think it's a little finicky, but I'm going to come back and rework the water at some point. I'm filming this not all my slides completely complete, but I think it'll be comprehensive enough. So starting off, to generate normals you could offset, so usually you calculate the sine wave in just using math. So as I showed before, there's a sine wave panning through, but you can bake down this this sine wave to a texture, which you can see in the top left. There's white and black bars, which are essentially which are essentially just the sine wave but baked down to a texture. And you pan that across and you get exactly the same effect, and it's a lot easier to generate a norm map from a height map, which you can see works perfectly fine in the bottom right. But you can also scale this up to Gerster waves. I think I might even have it in my documentation here. You scroll down to here. So this is what the sine waves we saw, and this is a more complex Gerster wave height map. And you can pan 4 of these over together, and that will give you a similar look as using math for these Gerster waves. The problem is because they're baked down, they're no longer real time. So you can't make small adjustments like amplitude or anything in real time. So if you had dynamic weather effects, you can no longer control that. I guess you could reduce, you could put a power into the textures and maybe do it like that, but it wouldn't be as effective as just using the math. Also that requires texture samples, where I believe this just calculates it all in the vertex shader. So since we're handling so many normals, I did create a bunch of material functions for blending normals, all at different quality. So this one, I'm trying to remember which one's which. This one I think is the lowest quality one, which simply just appends or adds the red and green channel together, and then just appends a blue to the blue channel. No, appends a value of 1 to the blue channel, which is very cheap, but it does blend the normals correctly. And then this is I think it's called rotated normal. I'm not going to remember the name right now, but this is the most expensive variation of it. It gives you the best quality result, but it's quite expensive. And then this is what's talking about with derivatives and tangents and so forth. And then this is a trochodial wave. So this is the one step up from the sine wave, which is where you include a cosine wave to displace, I think it's longitudinally. So if you know how sound waves move, they displace air. Probably better off Googling it, to be honest. Oh, I've got caps on. Sound waves. Let's do that. So here you go, longitudinal and transverse wave. So you can see the sine wave is transverse, and then the cosine wave is almost longitudinal. So the vertices of the mesh are almost bunching up near the peaks of the transverse wave, since they're in like sync, they're in the same phase. And that gives you these peaks that you see here. This also has its own issues with normals. You have to generate normals again using a little different string of code, well, HSL. And then this is the trochodial wave overlap 4 times. You can see here we have 4 trochodial waves with different directions and such, and they're all interacting with one another to simulate the look of water moving. And you can see it works really well actually, and the reflections look quite good too. And then I did a little bit more math to basically generate like a separate mask using the sine waves provided earlier, I believe, to create a mask that you can control to just influence where foam is cast. You can generate this mask using each of the trochodial waves to create like a really accurate foam mask for each for like the whole seascape, or you can just use one. But it's just quite pricey, and I think there's an easy way of doing this where you basically sample like I think this is down here, where you basically take the height and the max height and all that so forth, and you just calculate the height from there. Or you can do something where you cast noise in world space, and then you displace it from there to create like noise on the waves. I think I did something similar with a color gradient in the waves later on when I stylize it, but you can just limit that to the tips of the waves. But then you're limited by how high the waves are, and if you ever change the wave height, you also have to change the height of that, and I guess it looks confusing. But yeah, then you can pass noise for it and I'll add the foam. Jumping forward quite a bit, this is why I kind of ditched the blog almost. So you can see the blog is very close to what I had there on the slides. It's very thorough. And then I sort of just dipped off from here because I found the blog was holding me back. So I just went full ahead and just, full steam ahead, and just went for the waves and just tried to do it and not get restricted by my blog and get so caught up in all the research and all the references. And I think this turned out really well, like functionally and mathematically it's really good, but I think it's still lacking on the art side, and I think I was just so caught up in the function of it that I never properly delegated time to the art side properly. I just wanted to get it over with. But you can see here, I think I'm going to do a quick overview of this. So these are the Gerstner waves here with multiple samples, and these are the normals and the waves like displacement being added together. And then this is using a small texture sample of noise to basically add some randomosity to the waves and panning it through for the displacement in like a certain axis. This is because the Gerstner waves, even though they are like mathematically generated, they still can tile unless you're doing something like fast forward transforms. So this just slightly breaks up that tiling. And then we have panning normals that add like micro detail on top of the waves are the macro detail. And then this is the color blend here. And then this is using a cube, so a render target, which is essentially just capturing the scene to a cube map to basically project like the reflections of the scene around it. It's not too impressive in the video because there's nothing around the waves to really project onto them. But that's essentially what it does. And you throw that into the specularity in front of the waves to basically give that effect. So here's the finalized product of the singular trochodial wave. That's the material function. And then this is the final video. I'll quickly show this. Just making sure I'm still recording. That'd be awful. I have been recording this whole time. So you can see you've got the color blending here. You can blend between the bottom and the base and all that. I go peak and trough. The softness between them, the shift, how the cube map is being used, various parameters for like emission, roughness, metallic, as you expect. The normal intensity between these micro things. You see, right now the waves are almost like stuck between a limbo of being stylized and realistic, and they're not on either side. And I think I need to come back to these waves and just delegate some time to just be like, they are realistic or they're stylized, and not this weird in between. And I would like to maybe, instead of going for a big seascape, maybe just go for like almost like a pond or a river, which look a lot nicer. And also, right now, they don't really seem to have much depth, they look quite flat. And they don't. The problem is translucency is so expensive, especially on such a large scale. So you can maybe fake depth of some sort, or I might just use translucency, but like for a pond. But you see specularity for now, so forth, so forth. Various controls for the waves, reduce the amount of gusts in the waves, amplitude, length, number of waves, speed, steepness, direction for all of them, and how they all overlap. And the noise control. You see it all works there. Just going through it quickly. That looks funky. Anywho. This is the kind of style I would have wanted to go for. This realistic style from Ghost Recon Breakpoint, a game I was recently playing at the time. And the waves are like stunning. And I love how they shift the colours of different environments, how it integrates so well, the reflections, specularity. It looks just a lot more realistic and how the light interacts with it. I think the problem was I was trying to render these waves like realistically, which water is one of the hardest things to render, and I still haven't properly mastered the skill of rendering anyway, especially realistically. Even especially in Unreal, which is much harder. So getting that's quite hard. But you can see how the light dances off them here, how you see through it, the foliage underneath, shadows on top, the water just in this river is really nice. Little splashes and decals and so forth. And the ocean looks amazing. There's also these like little waves coming into the shore. I think they might have done that through like you could use distance fills maybe, or like a vertex. If it's a large mesh, you could vertex paint the edges to basically like control a sine wave coming into the edges. I think I've seen something similar. I think I did something similar for Battle Bay last year. But then, leaving this project for now, because I got really hung up on the ocean, I went straight to a snow shader. Starting this, we obviously needed snow. So to create the snow, I just went to Summons Designer and made a general. It's just noise overlapping itself with a bit of blurs and slow blurs, so forth, so forth. But the problem is with snow in Summons Designer, snow has a lot of components which you just can't really render in Designer. You have to like subsurface scattering or like glitter and stuff like that. So I had to take it into Engine and give it a quick like run through and see if it actually does look good. So here it is, Unreal 5 with some displacement. And also these renders are pretty simple. It's just like 4 lights in like a white room with some nice little orbs. And I think it looks really nice. It did prove that it worked quite well. To optimize the snow though, I separated the macro and micro detail. I think you can see it here. So this is the macro of the snow here, and this is the micro here. The micro is just a really fine, like small detail like noise. I don't know why I was about to say panning. Really fine noise, which you can tile a lot smaller than the macro detail. So the macro detail will be tiling like, let's say like at 1, and then the micro detail will be tiling like 5 times for each one tile of the macro. I don't know if that was a bit confusing to say. So because of this, we don't have to have one really large texture to capture the micro detail that would be on the macro. So this texture can be reduced from like 4K to 1024. And you can see this texture is a little different than usual normal maps. So usually they're in the compression format of I think it's BC7, which is in a range of -1 to 1 in Unreal. But because we're compressing the normal detail is in the X and Y channels are RNG, and then there's no normal detail in the blue channel, which is Z. So we have to use compression format DXT, which is in 0 to 1. So in Engine, we have to take out this RNG channel, and then also we have to derive the blue channel, which you can calculate. I think you can use like a variation of Pythagoras or something like that. And you derive the normal Z. And then we have to take this this normal map range, which is in 0 to 1, and extrapolate it to -1 to 1. And then we can use those normals correctly. And then in the B channel, we can delegate AO, and then alpha channel we can use height map. I think most of the textures are in .png, just to save memory basically. PNG is lossless. It's a little smaller, but like if we wanted the alpha channel to hold more, like retain better detail, we could use I think Targa, which has a lot better like alpha channel detail, but I think it's like 2 or 3 times bigger than PNG, usually like 8 megabytes instead of 3 or something like that, But yeah. This macro detail works excellently, and you can get that really nice fine detail on the snow. I did ditch this later on though, because I think I had because I started using RVTs, which I'll get to later. I might explain this now just so I don't forget later. But the micro detail, an RVT is a real runtime virtual texture, which essentially, instead of calculating the whole landscape in real time, you bake it all down to like a large scale texture and apply it to the whole landscape. And this texture is split up into multiple like textures you can like stream to one another for like mip-mapping and so forth. So these tiles of the RVT are at like certain resolutions, like 512 by 512 or so forth. So these tiles are a lot lower resolution. So the landscape is overall like a little lower res, but usually on a landscape you have a bunch of stuff on top of it. I don't think it matters. So this micro detail is just completely lost anyway on the RVT. So I've just basically removed it later on and just chose to use like just higher res macro textures. So this worked really well for the real time thing, but it's not used too much right now. I think it still works really well in some places, but you wouldn't even notice it on the RVT. But carrying on, micro detail, RG, same normal thing, you know, putting it back to from 0 to 1 to minus to 1 to 1, and deriving normal Z. And then this isn't in the alpha channel, the glitter over here. This is, this glitter is just a separate texture, 128 by 128, and it's just a bunch of white dots. And this glitter is a really cool effect that I've used in the snow. Oh my god, I need water. Okay, so this is the first rendition of the snow material. You can see the normal stuff here. And then just some Fresnel on the base color, some SSS built in with Unreal. And then here's the glitter down here. I think I might be able to slide. That makes it a lot easier. So here you go, taking the RNG channel, deriving normal Z, putting it to 0 to 1, minus 1 to 1, and then appending back and controlling normal intensity. These are just material functions, and this material function here is the sparkles, or glitter. And we have screen space and texture coordinate based ones. So one is mapped to the asset, it's like whatever the material is on, the glitter is mapped to that, and it's in the emissive channel. And then also, the glitter is also mapped to screen space. And whenever the ones in screen space line up with the glitter on the material, the glitter will be multiplied against one another and it will pop through. So based on wherever the camera is, when the camera is moving and the glitter lines up, it will flicker. So you get that sort of effect you would see like when you're walking down the road and the streets are frosty or something. It works really well. I will say if the camera's moving quite fast, it can be, in my opinion, a little noisy, but I don't think there's any way of fixing it. It's just like how it works. I think I've seen this effect used also in like games like Overwatch where they're stylized snow. It looks really nice. I'm not going to put up a reference for that though. I mainly chose to do this in a video format so I can start pulling up the actual Unreal scene if I do want to reference any of this. But this glitter obviously is using two texture samples for the screen space and texture coordinate space. So instead I used a little bit of HLSL shader code to generate some noise procedurally in Engine. And you can see it in the background there, simplex noise. And I believe it just takes like some, what's it called? The frac of some sine waves, and then basically expands, like takes the UVs and multiplies it up like really large, and then those sine waves, all the little peaks come like little dots and squares and so forth. You see in the background, all the white troughs and all that. It's a little bad explanation, but I don't really have to explain it any better right now. You can see using these custom HLSL nodes to basically generate noise, similar to that we had already in the texture. But these are some of the drawbacks I had with using this normal compression method. Well, I guess it's like uncompression. So this is a normal map here, normal map. And you see the snow looks quite nice and fluffy. And this is using the uncompression method with in DXT format. The normals are quite hard, and if you lower it, it looks a bit better. But you also get like a reddish tinge as well at high intensities. I have fixed this. It was an issue with the math being used. Correcting it, the normals look perfectly fine. They look just as good as they would in the BC version. Well, BC compression. BC7. So yeah, this is not an issue anymore. I completely fixed this. This is quite an early one. And then moving on to the good stuff. This is the render target. Snow displacement. I guess the render target is a regular explanation. This is the snow displacement. So this is using a camera projected orthographically under the map to basically capture the objects rendered to custom depth to displace the snow. So you can see above here, it's capturing custom depth, unseen depth, and it's masking it off and basically writing that to a depth check. I think there's a bit of blueprint code here showing it being written to that render target. Let's go back to here. So I think that's pretty simple. You can see this map here is just black and white, and those white lines are like feet or like whatever object you choose. It would be like a square that's just like laying on the snow, and it's writing to that target, you can then take this target and then like multiply it against the displacement of the of the landscape that's already there, and it'll just displace it under the feet of whoever's there. You have to use a bit of custom custom UV stuff here to make sure that the render target is on the same location as the actor, so it's following like the player or the camera of the player. And it also does this in discrete steps to remove any issues with like I think this is on a later slide actually. God, this is a lot to remember. Here we go. So here's the height of the landscape multiplying against it. This is the render target. This is the capture and the UVs of the capture, and it's I think this HLSL code here is preventing the capture from so you have a render target has clamped edges, which basically interpolates that out infinitely. So if you reach the edge of the render target in game, this will cause like loads of like streaking errors and it looks awful on the landscape. So that removes that essentially and clamps it to that. You can see it here actually. So right now this is only writing to one render target, and it can only write information there like temporarily. It's not being remembered in any sense, so you don't get that trail you want, and the landscape's only being displaced when it is being interacted with. As soon as you stop interacting with it, it stops getting displaced, which obviously is suboptimal. So to solve this, you do something called ping-ponging, which is where you write between two render targets. I have a pretty good explanation written down here actually. So it's the process of alternating between two render targets, so A and B. You cannot read and write to the same texture at the same time, so the solution to ping-ponging. So while A is being read, B is being written to, and then that switches. And this back and forth allows you to constantly update a render target every frame. So in this use case, I basically add back to the past render target that's being bounced between to remember the information of any prior interactions with like the snow or like in the depth check, I guess. So here you go, you've got these ping-ponging back and forth here. And use I think draw to persistent as a depth check there. And you can see now information is being remembered by the depth targets. So you see the cone rolls and its trail is remembered and it stays in a depth target. But the thing is, this is permanent. And with snow, snowfall, it rises back up. So there's a bit of a small bit of blueprint code which simply just adds snow back to the scene slowly over time. I think it's per event tick instead of not event tick. Event tick is quite pricey. I think it's per delta time to basically reduce that and keep it consistent. So snow slowly adds back up into the scene. Independent of frame rate. And this is this little bit of code here is essentially making sure the render target follows the player in discrete steps. If it just tracks the player perfectly every frame and not in discrete steps, you get a few issues of like how the snow is rendered and the displacement and so forth. Let's see. Here's a nice little video showing the snow in action with the player walking through it and a render target on the right. Looks pretty good. Also, I was using like a little lerp to blend the normals. I think right here it's in the render target format is in like RGB 16-bit float or something. I reduced this to like 16-bit just R. So it's only in one channel, it reduces the memory quite a bit, so there's less data being passed around, which basically optimizes it a bit more, especially when the data is being passed back and forth every frame. So as you expected with most, I don't know if you guys expected this, I don't know. With most terrains, UV mapping doesn't work too well. So with a terrain, you always have very harsh slopes. You might have like overhanging cliffs or something. You can't UV map that without stretching. It's just impossible. So triplanar blending is the best solution to this, which is where you essentially project a texture from X, Y, and Z, and then interpolate and blend between it in like the awkward angles like 45 degrees between X, Y, and Z. So you can see that in the top right there. This is a quick rendition of it here, that this HLSL node-based code here. But the problem is this interpolation doesn't work like awfully. It looks terrible for snow, just by the nature of how it is formed, like how bumpy and it is and stuff like that. So I think this problem could be quite easily fixed if we use something called height map triplanar blending. Which you can see here. I'm trying to connect. Okay. You can see here is basically like harshly masking between the edges on 45 degrees and create like a really nice. There's like no seam. It looks very like uniform, almost like perfectly tiling. Whereas you can see here you get this interpolating across the bricks, doesn't look very good. I'm just going to refresh this quickly because it seems to be struggling. This is the worst time for the internet to drop out. Please do not. Okay, while it's reconnecting. The problem with triplanar blending is I think you need to recalculate, because you're projecting the textures and the normals, you have to recalculate the normals somehow else. And I already had so many issues with normals in the landscape that I really wouldn't want to recalculate them as so. Oh, come on, please, not right now. Okay. And when I did get later onto this project, I just completely forgot about triplanar blending, to be honest, because I've never had an issue with the landscape where it's been stretched so far that okay, where like none of the landscapes had a slope so harsh that the snow hasn't rendered well. So I've just stuck to UV mapping essentially and then pushed it to an RVT. I'm sure I could do triplanar blending, but it never really was on my mind, especially early on the project, because early in the project I wasn't using an RVT, it was real time, which means you only have 16 texture samples available to you, and triplanar blending naturally uses 3 texture samples since you're projecting X, Y, and Z. And I wanted to blend multiple materials into this landscape, so if I had like 5 materials, well that's 15 texture samples just from 5 materials, ignoring everything else that could be there. So that's just impossible. Never would work. Fortunately, this issue is like foregone now because of the RVT. There's not as many texture samples since it's all just baked down to one huge texture, so you don't have to worry about that. So I could always re-implement height map triplanar blending and try to implement it and calculate the normals and so forth, but I honestly don't think it'd be worth it at this point. It might be nice if anyone ever like takes this project and needs it, if they try and make some like wacky landscape that I would have thought of. But here you go, you can see UV versus triplanar. You can see this like interpolation across this 45-degree angle looks awful. It just looks tiling and crap. Whereas in one left, the UVs look really nice and like bumpy. Here's like a quick compiled scene, like it rendered a bit more nicely. Bit of snow, a bit of what's it called? Exponential height fog. It looks alright. The snow piles back up a bit quickly in this one, but it's quite nice. And then I went on and created some more snow. So this is like a more untouched snow. Similar thing, packed normals, 0 to 1 range, blah blah blah, AO, height, PNG. This is I think this is like snow tracks, like snow prints. I just took an image of like a boot and just turned it to an alpha and then tiled it randomly. I think this could be done a bit better, especially because I think I put it into a material. I think it'd be nice to just have it as a decal or something. Actually, it should be. I think it was going to be a decal. I think I just completely forgot about it, to be honest, and just left it in a folder, but I did do it. And then moving on from to further, like, the snowy landscape to make it more pretty, I started working on a snow casting shader. So you can see here, this area up here, this node bundle, this is essentially the texture inputs for the underlying asset. So you can control like the albedo, like saturation, brightness, contrast. It generates the specularity through like the dot product and like desaturates it. You can control the metallic amount, AO, normals, roughness, all that. I did provide a switch to turn this off because it is quite a lot of calculation unnecessarily, especially in real time. So there's a lot. In most of my shader code, I provide like shader switches which allow you to turn off like immaterial instances, like what features you are using in the shader, so you're not wasting time, casting snow to the underside of a mesh which you won't even see. So you're not wasting time running that HLSL code. And then below here is a small like snow shader, which these two materials, essentially this line in the middle blends these two together using an alpha generated by this. So it's using the vertex normals in world space, sampling the z-axis to create a mask, because snow obviously falls from above. And then there's also a vertex color, vertex painting, which allows you to control like where the snow is painted and like how it influences the mesh. And this is a really early rendition of this, and you can see it here. There's also material parameter collections, which are basically global parameters that you can access in like multiple shaders, which allow you to change it for all meshes in one go. So if you look here, this material parameter affects every single mesh, even if they're on different instances or different materials, whatever. If that material parameter is in there, then it will be used. You can see all the controls here for the snow. Or not if the material video doesn't work. There you go. So you have like AO, specular, the glitter amount, that's still here, SSS, roughness, the UV scale and so forth like that. I think there's also displacement as well. If you look here, snow displaces upwards on this. But then I jumped a lot further forwards on the snow project as well. So this is a more recent rendition of the snow casting shown on a pork pie. You can see here the snow casting is a lot more detailed than just the vertices. It's using the normal information of the pork pie to basically generate like the cavity information. So the snow is casted away from cavities and so forth. There's also a snowfall like shader. So you see the snow will pitter patter on the pork pie. You can see norms updated, metallic, spectacularity, base color. You see the snowfall there. There's also a custom SSS shader as well. This is the landscape as of now. It's using a bit of math to do custom angle blending. So the main thing I want to do with this landscape is make a lot of it automatic. So I didn't want to go around hand painting all these cliffs and all the floor. So a lot of it is using custom angle blending, like comparing the angles between certain faces and vertices to generate where dirt and where cliff faces will be and where snow will be. Overall looks quite nice. I could always blend in more materials, but I think at this point there's not much else it needs apart from dirt, snow, and rock. You can always change this the dirt for something else, like grass. But here we go. So the snowcast shader also allows for a local space mask as well, which you can control the rotation independently, so it locks to a certain rotation or it's always above on the top. There's the vertex painting. Here's it on like a log and an axe. Works very well. So the main issue I had with this, like casting snow onto objects and having objects in snow, is that they should blend into the snow, because you always get a really hard seam with any object intersecting in 3D. So I tried using temporal AAA, which is dithering, to basically help blend it, which is like form of transparency, mask transparency. But this looked a bit crap, honestly, and you can't control it. It won't just blend with the landscape or blend with anything it's intersecting with. So using RVTs, you can blend with just the landscape and it blends the normals directly. So you see on this pork pie here, the normals of the landscape being directly blended into it, and there's no harsh seam along this edge at all. I think right now it's just using like a scalar value for height to blend this, whereas I think I could update it to mesh distance fields to make it a bit more accurate. And then this is the custom SSS that I made, which is just a bit cheaper than Unreal's inbuilt version, I think. And it just takes the vector of the camera and the vertex normals and the sun atmospheric vector. My throat hurts a bit from us talking. You can see that pork pie has got like highlights for it from like the sun coming through. It's supposed to be like jade, and then if we come to this rock here, you can see it highlights as you pass through it and how the sun's orientation affects it. I might quickly head into engine soon and go over everything a little quickly. I will say the final version of the project, I focus on optimization the whole way through and this project runs phenomenally, but for the final piece I just ignored optimization and just made it look real pretty and rendered it nicely, just so there's something a bit more for you to look at when you mark this rather than just a bunch of nodes. This is using height contrast and vertex painting to basically influence how materials are painted onto the landscape. So you can see how this snow is sort of like dotty, and around here as well, the trampled snow. Looks very nice. This is something that's done in the landscape. There's so much. So you have a macro texture to basically add variation over it. So it's just like a slight black and white mask that multiplies against it. And these are the auto casting up here. This is it basically takes the distance of the camera against I think the Z buffer. Is that right? Or this one's using pixel depth, but there's another variation that uses that. I think absolute well position and camera position, not the Z buffer. I think pixel depth is the Z buffer though. And that basically uses that information to generate a distance field, like to calculate a distance which you can mask off to control the tint of it, so you can tint the landscape to be slightly more blue in the distance or something like that. This doesn't work anymore. You can't. The problem with RVT, since this is all baked down to a large scale texture, you can't do any real time effects, which makes it quite difficult since the real time effect of displacing the snow is obviously real time. So a lot of it's kind of delegated afterwards, not before on RVT. So a lot of it is baked down, but some of it's done afterwards anyway, which is a bit complex. So this distance phase is a bit awkward to do now. So anything like I had one that was really a in the ass. I can't remember what it was. I think, yeah, all my Fresnel broke because all my Fresnel was done in the materials beforehand and baked down, but then the Fresnel would break because you can't bake down Fresnel since it's a dynamic effect. What is this one down here? Oh, this is a custom specular setup. So I don't have any. It might just be easier to go into engine for this one actually. To come into engine quickly. I don't have any textures for specularity, but specularity is really important for landscapes so you don't get loads of harsh light bouncing over the whole floor. So if I come to the buffer visualization and specular, you can see how when I turn and move around, the floor gets a bit lighter and darker, and all the textures have their own specularity to them. Because right now I'm calculating specularity by taking base color and getting a dot product and desaturating it. God, my phone's gonna be gone after this. Yeah, it's just more distance-based stuff. I think I also have a custom tessellation set up for so you can control tessellation based on the distance from the player and influence how much tessellation it is, so there's more control over that, since tessellation can be quite pricey. Also using a blur for the render target for the displacement, so you see how there's nice softer edges, and you can also basically control which material is being placed through it right now. I think right now in the RVT, it's just using like a flattened normal, and instead of 9 texture samples, which is really pricey, it's using 7 texture samples and blurring in a circle, an offset circle, to create that that blur and offset and just flatten normals for the snow. It works quite well, but you can see here the shader complexity for the RVT is a lot better. So the pixel shader is a lot higher for the real time one, and it's a lot lower for the RVT. I think this might be a bit different now because the RVT's got a bit more complex recently, but it's still a lot better than if it was real time. So here's the whole scene. This is not the finalized version, this is just a bit more of the displacement shown in the landscape. So walking around it. I had a lot of issues with rendering. The rendering's a lot nicer now. But yeah. Let's just jump into Unreal quickly before I show you the final thing. I'll show you the final thing. It'll be easier. I haven't got the industry critique yet, but I will be writing it down. Here's the final render as of now. I'm sure you're going to look at that yourself. But the lighting's a lot more improved. I spent a lot more time learning it, and I put some post-processes over it. So this is the G buffers, you have base color, the final render, roughness, specularity, and normals. Yeah, the snow casting effect looks really nice here. The detailed snow cast on the logs, the decals work really well. The snow casting on the trees, dynamic shadows, stuff like that. I think I'm using cascaded shadow maps. I think that's what they're called. I think I'm also writing the velocities to the base part, so what's it called? The temporal anti-aliasing doesn't cause any issues with the grass here as well. That's very nice. So the foliage casting, essentially just using a small bit of math to control and mask where foliage would be casted to. I've just chosen dirt for here now, and all the foliage has custom like LODs and billboards and various materials to control it. So here's the grass right now. I think I'm just going to quickly blitz through these and go into engine. It'd be so much easier to explain to an engine. Yeah, see foliage, looks like grass. This is the full RVT right now. Got the ground cast materials. This is like controlling where it tessellates and where it masks off. This masks off so you can choose where emissive and subsurface happens. Here's the normal blending, here's the tessellation control. Here's where it's being written to the RVT, here's where it's being read by the RVT. Here's some like specularity stuff which is being baked down to. These are the foliage masks down here. I did have a foliage mask. Oh, you can see it here actually. One of these foliage masks was for the snow, but there's a little bit of math here is for the ground instead. I decided not to have any foliage on the snow at all. It doesn't have to be used just for foliage, it could be used to cast rocks or stuff like that procedurally. So this whole scene you could throw into any single landscape mesh at all and it'll instantly turn it into like a snowy scene, no questions asked. Here's the blur being reduced down to 7 texture samples. Here's the new snow cast, a lot more complex. I'll just take that into engine. This is like some mask materials for the mega scans, and this is for the decal, which also has a bit of math to basically generate an alpha mask without using a texture sample, which is like a sphere, so you can mask out the edges of like a decal without any issues. So it blurs off nicely. This is the foliage. I'll just cover that in engine again. Oh my god, why did I do so much stuff? I'll cover it here. So this is the foliage shader. It has general controls like desaturating and controlling the brightness of like the albedo and stuff like that, and general normal manipulation. So I have multiple LODs, I think about 6, which are just 3D meshes, and the last one is a billboard for like far distances for optimization. So essentially, panning noise is pushed over the mesh to create like a wind blowing effect, and this panning noise is in world space, and this world space noise also influences like the subsurface scattering of the foliage, so more sun glimpses through when wind is blowing through it. There's also per instance random, so every bit of foliage that is instanced has a slight colour tint to it, so they're not all the same. There's highlights using vertex colour. The wind is controlled by vertex colour as well. This vertex colour also affects SSS slightly. You can see this is how the noise is controlled here. And then this is me using post-processes to basically affect the scene. So the scene up here is just lighting and nothing else, and this is using post-processes to give it a bit more of a bluer hue, make it a bit colder, change the contrast, just make it a bit more interesting. I think there's like a lot of other things as well, like bloom and so forth. Also, this I know I said in these textures earlier that I have AO packed into here, but RVTs have no option for AO, so I think I just switched to screen space AO, which is just a post-processes, which works a bit better. Also, I think distance field AO might be being used as well, but I think that's more real time than I guess SSAO is also real time. Don't know, maybe I could switch one off. I haven't thought about that. But here we go. You can see the project here, and it's all working great. You can see the detail on this snowcast here. You can see it's a bit messy just because of the quality of the Megascan. It's quite a hard Megascan to do. You can see the snow on this as well, the glitter on the tree. The snow here, I can go into this mode and show you the displacement. There you go. Okay, what was I heading into? So let's head into the current RVT. So here we go. So here you can see everything behind this node here is being baked down, and everything like past here and like up here is real time. So that's why this RVT is like weirdly offset to make it real time. There's a lot of kind of weird sacrifices you have to make. So there's a few issues in optimization. It's not as optimized as it could be, but it also, for the sake of like visual fidelity, we have to do this. Well, I have to do this, I guess. There you go, glitter optimize spec. I think my head is starting to hurt, and I think this video might be hitting about an hour, so I might end it there. But the project should be submitted with the oh my god, this file should be submitted with the project, so if you want to have a look around you can. It's a little optimized now since, as I said, to make it look pretty, I've added volumetric clouds and stuff. Volumetrics are so pricey, but it's all there. I think I'm done for this video here. I'll be tweaking the slides, so what you see in this video for the slides might be a bit different for the final product, but hopefully this covers all the notes that so instead of having to write all these notes, I can just say it. So thank you for listening. Tally ho.